Hello, hello, hello. Well, it seems the cyber gremlins got us today. I apologize for those of you who joined our LinkedIn Live Summer of Growth series about building influence. Everything shut down. And isn't that fun? It teaches you about resilience and it teaches you about staying calm in the face of adversity. But I am recording this program, so unfortunately, I won't see your chats in the chat box and I won't be able to take your questions at the end, but we're going to find some workarounds for that. I do want to talk to you today about how to build influence through your personal brand. And that's my program. That's the content I'm going to share. And it's going to be one way, unfortunately, but add your comments as you see this post go live. I remember years ago hearing a speaker that changed my life. I was sitting in the audience, and as this speaker took the stage, the entire audience fell quiet. Everyone was in such high anticipation of what he was going to share. Our pens were poised, our piece of paper to take notes on was ready. And as he talked, the audience hung on every word. When he wanted the audience to laugh, they seemed to laugh. When he wanted them to cry or feel emotionally moved, the reaction was appropriate. Everything he said was taken in and relatable to the people he was addressing. He even talked about the fact that at the end of his program, he was going to have his newest book available for sale in the back of the room. He mentioned some upcoming programs that he was going to be releasing where he would take a limited number of people from the audience to participate in that program. So be sure to leave your business card at the back of the room. As he finished his program, people started lining up for his book and for these programs even before he was done. This speaker had influence. The audience was ripe and ready for the message he was about to deliver. What happened? What was it that made him influential? Well, first of all, his reputation had preceded him. People had obviously done their homework. They knew who he was. They'd looked up his website. They'd watched speaking reels that he had done, or maybe they'd even heard him speak before. So before he even took the stage, they were ready to receive the message. The second thing he did is he knew his audience. He knew the people he was going to be presenting to. So that message was so tailored and so personal to the people he was speaking to that honestly, everything he sold or offered was ready to be purchased. And that was the third thing he did is he let them know, he let the audience know how they could take advantage and purchase and buy from him. When it comes to building influence, these are some key ingredients to becoming influential. And I have to share that program that I heard and the experience I saw the audience had have was one of the reasons I wanted to become a professional speaker because I wanted to be able to positively impact and affect other people in the same way I had seen him do. I ask you to consider who are people in your life that are influential, who have made a difference in your life, whether it's your parents. Maybe you had a father like mine who was such a larger than life force in my life that when he gave me a suggestion or an idea, or he brought up a recommendation, it carried a lot of weight with me. Maybe it was a teacher that was an important part of your career path or who gave you the confidence to be able to follow a dream that maybe others told you wasn't possible. Perhaps it was a boss or a former boss, a colleague or a peer that you saw something that created a level of influence within you that changed your life in your career. That's what we're going to talk about today is the power to positively influence other people. If you follow me here on LinkedIn, then you know I am a personal branding and reputation management specialist. I'm an author of 5 books on the topic of narrative, personal branding, military transition, and building influence. I am also really proud of the fact that I am a LinkedIn Learning instructor, and 8 of my LinkedIn Learning courses continue to be bestsellers on the platform because people are finding the value and the positive influence that I try to communicate. I am really proud of a TED Talk that I did talking about my experience working with military and a Talks at Google program that are both of those you can find on my YouTube channel, which has tons of other content as well. So if you don't know who I am, that's a little bit about me. But we're talking about influence today. And what does it mean to have influence? Oftentimes, when we think about people who have influence, we think of social media influencers, right? People who have millions of followers on Instagram, and all they have to do is hold up a product or be seen wearing a certain brand, and their followers flood to the internet and try to buy that same product. Well, that is a type of influence, and I'm very proud and very grateful for having a large number of followers here on LinkedIn. I appreciate all of you. But does that mean that that gives you influence? It gives you the opportunity to reach a lot of people. And if used positively, you certainly can do a lot of good with it. Is influence the ability to make others do what you want? That's often a version of influence that I run into. But we have to be careful because influence is not the same thing as manipulation. It's not the same thing as coercion or bribery, which can be very negative forms of persuasion. That's not what we're talking about here today. But influence can be your ability to affect and persuade people. You can be a role model who influences the people around you. You can enlist others to believe in the same things you believe in that have a positive outcome. I teach global professionals how to positively drive and manage their image and reputation to have positive influence, whether that is in their industry to drive change and innovation, whether it's so for social change and making the world a better place, or whether it's in their own community to enlist people to engage in things that are better for the community as a whole. That's what I get to do. And when we think about influence as the ability to personally affect and drive the actions, opinions, and decisions of another person, then we can see how obviously that can be used for negative, right? Which is why we call it manipulation. But we also see the potential and possibility for how it can be used correctly and positively to make things better. And for somebody looking to grow their career, it's critical today to have a level of influence. You want your message to be received the right way. You want your contributions and ideas to be positively received, such that if you have to advocate for yourself or an idea or a change, that the people around you, from your boss to your boss's boss, to your colleagues, to the people that report to you, you want them to understand and feel a sense of alignment with your vision and mission. So it really is about moving someone in a direction. So let's look at some of the things that are needed in order to positively influence how people see you. First, you need credibility. You hear me talk about this a lot. Personal brands that aren't credible don't matter. They don't have any depth. They aren't trusted. They aren't referred or endorsed or relied upon. And the only way to build credibility is to know what your values are, be super clear about what it is you stand for, what you would fight for, what you would advocate, where your boundaries are, such that anything on the other side of that is not acceptable, what your values are, and then walk the talk. Live according to those values. So if you tell me that one of your values is honesty, then I should see examples, even in very difficult situations, where you are honest with the people around you. And you need to connect those two. So let's say, using that same example of honesty, that you have to pull aside a colleague of yours and share some really hard feedback. If you're going to be honest because it's one of your values, it's not enough to just be honest and assume they're going to understand why you're being honest. Your job is to tell them why. And perhaps even to frame it with, I appreciate what I'm about to share with you may not feel great, but honesty is something I value and I base my reputation on. So I'm going to share some honest feedback with you, and I hope you'll take it in the spirit in which it's offered. That's a way to connect the what and the why with the how. So when you tell people why, which is your values, then they understand what your action is and you can build credibility. The second important feature of being able to be influential is to have focus, to know what it is that you want to influence people for or with or in what way. If you have focus and you're clear, people are more likely to understand and find a way to relate to that message. The third is also clarity, right? Not only having focus, but being clear on the message, being clear on your assets and your liabilities. So if your personality is really large and boisterous and outgoing, okay, I'm talking about myself. But if your personality is that way, then you know how to use it as a strength. And you also know where it can be a weakness. I know there are times where I can step out on stage, and if I'm too much Lita, I can overwhelm people. So, depending on the audience, I have to be clear about what's a strength and what's a weakness. It's not always the same. And I might modulate my energy to make sure the audience feels safe. So, being clear on your strengths, your style, your personality, and your value proposition. Are you staying in your lane? Are you trying to be influential in things you really don't have expertise in? There is an advantage to staying in your lane. And your lane can be really wide, but it can't be an ocean. It has to have some boundaries and some borders so people know what to rely on you for and what to assign you credibility. Is your value proposition consistent? Are your actions matched up with your relationships and the way you communicate? If I tell you one of my values is generosity, but you see me withholding or holding back online, well, that's not a very generous thing to do. So you're going to start to challenge that. If you see me being honest with my colleague and sharing hard information, but you don't see me being honest with an audience, that's not consistent. So again, the burden is definitely on you to begin with to build influence. And I think you have to share your passion. Whatever you're passionate about, let people know. People want to connect with the dreams and the hopes and the ideas and the hobbies and the interests that you have. You have no idea who else might share those same interests. I was filling out a form the other day for a global speaker event that I'm speaking at. And one of the questions was, what's one of your hobbies? And I thought long and hard about my hobbies. And I don't have a ton of them because I do work as a hobby, but I've just recently taken up gardening and above ground vegetable gardening to be specific. And I put that in there and I sort of explained why I was led to that and what I was learning. And the person actually receiving this said, "Oh my gosh, me too." And we started this whole dialogue. And she said, "I really didn't think I was going to get lessons from you or learning from you about something related to your hobby. I thought I was only going to learn from you related to your topic, which is personal branding and controlling your narrative." So you never know where somebody might find a way to build relationship with you when you share your authenticity. So what does it take for other people to form beliefs about you such that they see you as an influencer? I think about that audience when that speaker took the stage. And one of the things that people experience as they're deciding, consciously or unconsciously, to find you influential and to take your advice as influence is their own biases and perceptions. And people are influenced and impacted by their upbringing, by their culture, by their community, and by their environment. Some of that we don't have a ton of control over. But if we know that about them, then there are ways we can navigate the conversation such that we can address those and help them understand a new way of thinking. The media, somebody's own experiences, the people in their inner circle, all have a certain level of credibility with the people that we want to influence. We have to know that about people before we can just set out to share a message and assume that a one size fits all is going to work. People are evaluating how you behave and how they feel. When you're frustrated, how do you act? Do you take that out on the people around you? Do you internalize it and stuff that down? When you're disgusted or disappointed or happy, how is that experience shared? People watch that about you and they're forming opinion about not only your credibility, but about how influential you might be and whether they're going to trust what you have to offer. And last, they're looking at your relatability to them. Are you so out of touch that anything you say falls on deaf ears? Well, that's not the goal here. We want people to take our message and do something with it, right? We want them to see the world better or see the world differently or learn something new or try something new. And if they don't feel we're relatable, that can be problematic. And that's often a challenge when we try to be authentic in a situation where we're all also trying to be influential. And my best advice is focus on the authenticity and find the people who are going to relate to that authenticity instead of trying to be somebody else just to have influence, because most people can see through that. So let me talk about the top ways to project influence for yourself. First, as you probably guessed, it's understand yourself. Understand who you are. What makes you tick? What are some of your hot buttons? What are some of the things that drive you? What do you value? How do you prioritize your life? Who are you and why are you here? That is so fundamental to being able to have somebody else see things differently. If you don't understand yourself, you're either come across as a talking head or you come across as not having the credibility and the depth to be able to convince me. If I'm your boss and you're trying to influence my decision making to see things a different way, I have to know that what you're bringing to the table is your truth. It may not be the truth as I see it, but it's your truth, that you're not trying to game the system or manipulate or coerce the situation. Knowing yourself and understanding yourself is number one. Number two, be authentic. Be real. We are real people underneath all the lights and the camera. We're real people, and real people connect with real people. Your boss, your boss's boss, your client, your customer, the media, your stakeholders outside the organization, your investors, if you have your own company, they're real people and they have a heartbeat and they have certain things they have to know, but they have a lot of things they need to feel. And when you're authentic, when you're real, when you can say confidently, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. You show your humanity, you show your humanness. Absolutely have personal boundaries for yourself. Know what things are unacceptable to you and when you will feel uncomfortable. Because if you cross those boundaries and get to the point of feeling uncomfortable, the audience will sense something has changed. They will see a difference that makes them uncomfortable and less likely to take on whatever you're advocating. So definitely be authentic. Number three, absolutely important, understand the people you want to influence. Get inside their head. In marketing, we call this having personas. Think about the person that you are trying to build influence with. If it's your boss, if it's your investor, if it's a colleague, if it's a competitor, somebody that you want to influence, what do you know about them? Really get inside their head. Think about, what do they care about? What do they need to know before they'll come to your side? What do they need to feel? Because remember, people act on logic, but they buy on emotion. We can't forget the feeling side of the influence. I remember that speaker and how he emotionally took that audience on a roller coaster of emotions in order to build engagement. He knew what was going to speak to them. I only hope I'm that same kind of influential speaker. But if we know the people that we're trying to influence, if we know the keywords that matter to them, if we speak their language, we have a better chance of influencing them. Think about how that relates to social media, even. You're posting content, you're engaging with people, you're forming connections. Are you speaking their language, or are you expecting that they will understand your language? Maybe your language doesn't relate to what they care about. Figure out what their language is. That's the language they're going to understand and grab onto the quickest. Number 4, show this audience the way to something better. Help them see that you've tried this new way, or you've explored this new idea or this new system or process, and this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to feel like. When you can show the audience what nirvana or ideal looks like, then you're able to paint a picture in their mind that becomes attractive to them. People want to move towards things that are better. And in marketing, there's also a strategy that says you can ask your audience to avoid pain or attract them to something better that's pleasure. I'm not of the philosophy that we lead with pain. That's never been my strategy. But I want people to know that, yes, if you define your brand, if you set out a strategy for your reputation, here are all the wonderful benefits you're going to get. And if that excites you, come with me. Read one of my books, watch one of my LinkedIn learning courses. Let's connect and see if we can have a conversation. I believe in leading with pleasure and showing people that things can be better. That's a great way to build influence. Number 5, be willing to learn and pivot. Sometimes building influence and being influential means asking more questions than offering advice. You want to be a role model, you want to lead people into an ideal state. You don't have to have all the answers. You might get halfway down the road and realize that you need to make a change or make a pivot. Having the confidence and the personal fortitude to be able to do that is inspiring to the people around you. Along those lines, check in and ask for feedback. It takes a really strong person to make themselves vulnerable enough to ask for feedback. But that's where we learn. And sometimes the greatest learning can come in the most uncomfortable way. And feedback can sometimes be really uncomfortable. I know when I navigate feedback processes and perception mapping with my clients, I have to hold their hand because sometimes the feedback doesn't always come out the way they were expecting. And that can hit your heart pretty hard. So we want to make sure that we're a strong enough person of character that we can take that feedback and we can navigate and find the opportunities in the feedback to grow personally and to help others grow. And finally, to be a person who has influence, to build a brand that is influential, requires you live with integrity. It means doing the right thing. It means doing the right thing even when no one is watching. It means having good boundaries for yourself, having clear values, understanding who you want to serve, and serving them in the best way for them, but also for you. It doesn't always mean being selfless, but it does mean having integrity, having a good work ethic, having a good personal moral code, and having boundaries that hold you personally accountable and allow you to hold others accountable to the same set of standards. That's how I see influence. And that's how I coach my clients to build influence. It's a very authentic process. It's not about manipulation and coercion and even bribery, right? So if you like my video, then I'll give you this. I find that it's almost a form of bribery. It's about showing people, the people that you care about, that you live the example by which you're espousing. And I see influence as a responsibility. Not everyone wants to have influence as part of their brand. But if you do, I hope this message has resonated. I hope that if you see your influence, whether it's as a parent or as a boss or a leader, as a politician, as a sports figure, as a speaker on stage, I hope you will own that responsibility. And what comes with it is the greatest joy because you will know that part of your legacy is now all these people that you have had an imprint on who are going out into the world and making things better, making things faster, making things bigger because of your part in their life. It is a burden of responsibility, 100%. But I have to say, it's one of the greatest burdens of responsibility you can take on for yourself. And if you're willing to take that responsibility and build a brand that has influence, that has impact, and that is inspiring, I wish you the best, and I will always be here to support you. I appreciate your participation in this program today, and I look forward to hearing your comments and your insights as you go out and build your value and your influence with your communities.